believe in. They are giving up their lives for something that is less than it can be. Some have longed for a home in a place of inspiration. Some will fill the emptiness inside by giving it all to the things that they believe. They believe. Maybe it's just the dream in me. Maybe it's just my style. Maybe it's just the freedom that I found. But given the possibility of living up to the dream in me, you know that I'd be reaching for higher ground.
My 14th birthday, matter of fact, I was in jail at Goodland. I knew about every gangster that ever lived. You know, I mean, them guys were my heroes. Like some people have football heroes. Al Capone was one of the guys that I most adored at that time.
St. Francis is a place where a lot of good things happen to people. The motto of the organization, or what's printed on all the literature and all the mail that goes out of there, is that lives change here, meaning lives change at St. Francis. And that is so true. St. Francis has achieved a remarkable success in taking care of children with problems. And after all, they are children. And children, when they're young, their lives can be shaped, their lives can be remolded. And that happened in my case. It happened with a number of the boys that I was there with. And the boys that are at St. Francis go on to lead very useful and productive lives.
The typical St. Francis boy is a boy with a primary diagnosis of conduct disorder. That means that he's had problems in his family behaviorally, problems in the community behaviorally, or problems at school behaviorally. The boys we admit into our programs are boys that we see have potential to make a satisfactory adjustment after they complete our program. An inpatient program such as St. Francis provides 24-hour therapeutic experience. The basic milieu that the boys are living in is a therapeutic milieu. There are boundaries and barriers set up in the program. Boys with conduct disorders tend to have a bit of a disregard for structure and boundaries. We're very good at setting up the structure and the boundaries, and we're very good at enforcing it so that the boys are repeatedly hitting walls in the program that are firm. When they hit those walls in the community, parents, most times than not, really can't stand firm. They have a lot of trouble doing that. We specialize in being able to do that.
I had always had the ability to somehow talk my way out of any particular problem that I was in, and that was one of the reasons why I think the behavior I had kept reinforcing itself, because there was never any real consequences for misbehaving. So when I got to St. Francis, one of the biggest shocks of my life was that I couldn't negotiate with these people.
In addition to the basic milieu program, we have superimposed over that a more dynamic and traditional psychiatric psychotherapeutic type program. This includes group and individual psychotherapy, psychiatric treatment, as well as family therapy. And it's through the combination of both the milieu process and the more traditional dynamic therapeutic process that the boy is allowed to, first of all, understand his behavior, look inside for the sources of that behavior, and then explore alternatives to that behavior.
When we started the group counseling, I guess it was what they were, meetings that we had like once a week. And I was having a lot of problems with the incident that I had in Illinois. And Jim Wayman had put me in a spot of role-playing. That was my biggest change. There was a change in me that night that changed me for the rest of my life.
You need somebody bigger and older than you to hit you, to knock you on the floor, slap you around, cut you down. You've never had that because you're respected at the university where you teach. Yeah, but I mean, you come home if you have the slightest problem. It's taken out on me.
And you keep on pulling these dumb stunts, stealing from us. You really need a hit right in the jaw.
We'll tell them, hey, just because your parents did it to you didn't mean you had the right to do it to
Yeah,
me. I don't want to do that. Cause
No, but
I want to, but I can't. Do it. Nick,
Sounds like you're
you
either-
gotta hear it. Because he grew up just like his parents treated him. And he'll realize that.
But you've got to decide how you're going to live your life around them, with or without them. If your goal is to change your dad, then you're going to miss out. You just got to do what's best for you.
Group sessions help me communicate with my wife all the time. They help me more than anything with just marriage. It really helped me with the marriage.
That's true. It really is.
Very much.
That's why the group was so good at the home, because if you couldn't have 5 or 6 people in that group and trust every one of them, then you couldn't open up and you couldn't talk about what was bothering you. That's important, you know, because of the work. When we get into the higher voltage works and stuff, you got to trust the guy you're working with. If I was the type of guy that would fly off the handle or was unreliable in the fact that, you know, I was coming in drunk half the time or staying up all night or something, you know, the guys get to where they don't want to mess with a guy like that because he's dangerous. If they can't trust me, then what kind of relationship can I have with somebody? That was something that I was taught at St. Francis too, that trust is really a main part of any relationship.
The fact that we're community-based allows us to help the boy explore those alternatives, not just in a closed ward as you would find in a typical acute care facility, but also in the community, in a normal school setting, in normal recreational activities that normal adolescent boys participate in when they're in high school. Jobs in the community, all the normal things for an adolescent boy are available here, and as that therapeutic process affects the boy is allowed to test his changes in the real world, not just, you know, on the unit. And that's a very, very positive component of St. Francis, one of the more unique components of St. Francis. Every St. Francis facility is community-based, and in that respect, boys that leave our program have had a good test of their ability to function appropriately as a normal adolescent. And I stress normal, because that is really our mission. Our goal is to normalize these boys through sophisticated psychiatric, psychological, and therapeutic techniques, integrated, of course, with activity therapy and Christian tradition. St. Francis is an Episcopal affiliated agency. The tradition and mission of St. Francis has been to provide therapy, but not just therapy in Christ. That doesn't mean we sell religion, but we feel that part of a change that will occur in a boy is also spiritual. And part of the tradition in St. Francis has been to always use good, up-to-the-minute psychiatric and psychological technique and integrate that with good Christian tradition and spiritual growth. It's spiritual not just for the boys in the program, it's spiritual for the staff. Not every minute of every day, but every staff person understands the spiritual needs of their boys. All boys meet with priests on a regular basis, attend church on a regular basis, and part of the monitoring of their treatment involves monitoring a pastoral program for them. This is one dimension of change that we feel is necessary for a boy to go on and live a productive life. As it is with adolescent boys, particularly adolescent boys with conduct disorders, it may not be an immediate response, but we do know that we plant the seeds, and sometimes it takes longer for those seeds to germinate than others. And it may be several years down the road that those seeds do germinate, but they typically do germinate.
My son, when you are sick, do not be negligent, but pray to the Lord, and he will heal you. Give up your faults and direct your hands aright, and cleanse your heart from all sin, and give the physician his place, for the Lord created him.
Do you remember early in the space program, the first orbiting spacecraft, I believe it was an Apollo program, one of the astronauts read from Genesis.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep.
As I listened to that, it brought me back to the days at St. Francis. And I never really imagined when I was at St. Francis there at that time that I would end up in the space program studying the origins of life, relating to the beginning of creation, how did we get here, what life forms we are, and it was really a religious experience. I had developed this concept from my association at St. Francis of doing things right, doing them the best you can if you get involved with them, and I think that was surely one of the principal things that allowed me to be there at that position at that time, being involved in that program, being a part of one of the greatest adventures that we will ever have.
There's just a whole spectrum of therapeutic recreation that we use here at St. Francis. It can range from simple ball games to bicycling trips, which are overnight trips and also involve camping and group activities and group cooperation. It can include more difficult activities such as kayaking, learning to master the balance involved in using a kayak, which incidentally I have a terrible time with. But the boys seem to do real well with it, and we have a lot of very well-trained staff that can help them develop those skills. So there's a full spectrum of activity therapy. It is not activity for the sake of activity. It's activity in the service of helping the boys make interchanges, learn about themselves, their own feelings, and the relationship between their feelings and the impact that has on others. The conduct disordered boy oftentimes is on a mission to show that he doesn't care. And it's through the therapeutic recreation program that they learn to care about each other and display that caring in a group activity type setting.
You know, there's a flying, there's a photography, running, biking, horse program, your model airplane program. You know, there's a football workshops each Sunday where we all go out and we play football. You know, that's to teach us to work together. You know, the weightlifting program, you know, those people down there have to work together. Otherwise, you know, you have to have spotters when you do things. Otherwise, you screw up, you're going to die. You know, you're bench pressing, you drop a weight on your throat, you can kiss it goodbye.
The staff and everybody were more like, I don't know, like big brothers or something. They weren't like parents, I don't think, because they were strict and everything, but it wasn't like no strict I'd ever been around before. I mean, it was more like a big brother telling me, you know, this is the way it should be and this is the way it will be, but it wasn't somebody grabbing a belt and beating me, you know, half crazy with it or something like that. It was, I don't know, it was really nice. I was finally, I don't know, I felt like I belonged there.
I'll never forget the day that Father Peter Francis, who was the director, the resident director at St. Francis at the time I was there, came up to me and he put his arm around me. And by that time, things had started to settle down for me a little bit, but he put his arm around me and he said, now, if I give you another chance, will you promise me that you'll try harder and that you will not be the disruptive person that you were? And at that moment, I thought to myself, here is a man who really has a lot of faith in me and a lot of love for me, because I had done nothing but disrupt his entire program all summer. I caused him a lot of headaches. I caused him a lot of difficulties. And here he was, even after I had done all of those things, telling me that he still cared about me. And I thought to myself on that day, if this man cares about me so much that he would do this for me, then I think I owe it to him, and probably more importantly, I owe it to myself to try and turn my life around and make the best of my experience at St. Francis. And that's exactly what I did.
programs are developed because they work. They're in the tradition of St. Francis and Therapy in Christ, and they follow along with our mission.
Well, if I wouldn't have gone to St. Francis, I honestly believe my life would have been really bad. I would have been in jail. I would have lost my family. Instead of having a good married life like I got right now, having 2 good kids like I have right now, plus getting my family back that I hadn't had for years, I have now got them all back.
When I first came to St. Francis, I never would have dreamed I'd have had my own business, employ 17 people. It's something that I never thought would have happened.
And I was there with all those kids that people never thought would be worth nothing. And well, I miss them guys.
A second incident that comes to mind in thinking back about how my association with St. Francis and the things I learned there later helped me in life is an incident that happened in the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, where I was chosen as the person that was to open the first sample box. We called them rock boxes at that time, and I got to step up to the chamber that had been designed for this and put my arms into the spacesuit gloves that were mounted in the chamber wall, and then raise up the lid and open it back. And this was the first view all of us had. There were many other scientists that were involved in the program standing around, and we were looking through the windows of this chamber and saw then the first glimpse of the lunar material. And I said to myself, you know, how did I get here? Kind of feeling a really wonderful feeling, and thinking back about all the people that had helped me at St. Francis to get there in that position at that time.
Well, as I look back on my life, I know for sure that I would never be in the position that I'm in today, being a lawyer and having my own family and being useful and productive, if it hadn't been for my experience at St. Francis. I'm now on the board of directors of the Ellsworth Home, and I enjoy that work tremendously.
For every one of me, there's 80 or 90 just like me, you know, out of that same home, you know. I mean, there's thousands of kids that are coming out of there, doctors, lawyers, linemen, I mean, that are successful in their own right. I mean, not just because they're a doctor or lawyer or lineman, but they're successful people, you know, adding something to society.
I think the best way to put it is there's this, you know, the prayer of St. Francis, where there's doubt, faith, darkness, light, despair, hope, sadness, joy. Grant that we may not so much be concerned or to be consoled as to console, to be loved as to love. It kind of shows you that a person can't make it unless they help out someone else. You know, I see now you're nothing unless you help. I mean, like this wing here. Every single part's important. But you take out one part, this plane won't fly.
Keep me through the night, lead me to the light, teach me the magic of wonder, give me the spirit to fly. Maybe it's just a dream in me, maybe it's just my style, maybe it's just the freedom that I found. Given the possibility of living up to the dream in me, you know that I'll be reaching for higher ground. Maybe it's just a dream in me, maybe it's just my style, maybe it's just the freedom that I found. Given the possibility of living up to